Good morning, folks. Welcome to the Rangers Reviews morning briefing on Wednesday, the 4th of August. It's the morning after the night before Rangers 2-1 defeat to Malmo in the third round of Champions League qualifiers. I'm joined by Derek and Jonny, as always. Derek, I'll come to you first. What's your feeling after you've slept on that result?
I think it almost feels like a win in a weird sense. Watching the game last night, first half was so. I think both sides were sort of sizing each other up. Rangers maybe growing into the game somewhat without really testing the Malmo goalkeeper, and then they came out for the second half, and for 45 minutes their heads went, and Malmo were 2-0 up. I don't know what went on. I mean, Steven Gerrard said afterwards as well, he was looking for leaders, and that's when your leaders need to step up when you lose a goal, but they were all over the shop. And it looked like it was going to end that way. I think everyone felt that Rangers were going to have to come back from a 2-0 deficit at Ibrox, but up steps Stephen Davis. I mentioned him in the piece this morning. If you don't buy a ticket, you can't win the raffle, and he had a shot on goal. I think Rangers really should have peppered the goal a lot more in that game, but he had a dig at the target, and it went in the back of the net courtesy of a deflection, and the changes the tie completely. You now feel more confident that Rangers can overturn that deficit. So it was a pretty mixed bag last night, but I'm sure that Rangers have enough about them to try and overturn that.
Yeah, and Jonny, I'll come to you. 2 goals in quick succession. It's not the first time it's happened. It obviously happened twice against Benfica, Michelin, Spartak Moscow in Gerrard's first season, and it showed the fine margins that exist at this level of competition, doesn't it?
Yes, it does. But I have to say, in all those games, I didn't get quite the same level of. I think Derek said they just lost it. They lost their heads, and that's what it felt like. It just really did feel like Malmo could go on and score more. It took a full 5 or 6 minutes for them to get themselves back on track. But after that second goal went in, it was very worrying because they just absolutely didn't look themselves. And you're watching it going, this is almost unbelievable, because we haven't seen this from a Gerrard side too often. Just looks so out of control of a game. And control's been such an operating word when it comes to the Steven Gerrard, Michael Beale strategy. But listen, what you have to say is credit to them, because they got themselves back on track. They hunkered down, and I think for the last 25 minutes, they performed actually really quite well. And they peppered the goal, or certainly the box, with opportunities, and just it took that slight bit of luck with the deflection there at the end for Stephen Davis just to bring them right back into the tie. But I don't particularly think Malmo were better than what we thought they would be, to be honest. I just thought Rangers were miles off their very best. And while that's understandable because you've got so many players missing, Kamara was a huge loss last night. Just his quality on the ball, the way he links plays, muscularity, his energy, it was all missing. The other thing was his tactical discipline. Arfield, is a good player, but is much more forward-thinking. Kamara has that defensive diligence, and I felt Borna Barisic really struggled with Berget last night, and Borna Barisic doesn't look quite up to his usual level of sharpness. So I think having Kamara in there would have made a massive difference. I think we'll maybe come on to John Lundstrom, but I think he also wasn't really at the races, being honest, in the game. Showed good elements to his play, but also some pretty dire ones. He had a very, very mercurial performance. But all in all, you have to say 2-1, you come away from that thinking, well, Rangers will be able to go through at Ibrox. The slight caveat I would say is it's a better result under away goals than it is with away goals gone. So Rangers need to win 2-0 obviously to go through now.
Yeah, sure. And we'll go to John Lundstrom just now. It looked like a midfield that hadn't played together before, I thought. Kamara was a big miss because of his ability to take some pressure off the ball, receive in dangerous areas. But I thought in particular, Derek, that midfield, even though they perhaps weren't at fault for the 2 goals, I thought the protection that's normally offered to that defence wasn't quite up to the same level as we're used to in a really top European performance from this Rangers side.
Yeah, I picked that midfield three beforehand. I felt that Gerrard would have went with that. It made sense to me. But you're right, it did look like they haven't played with each other, and they haven't. So I think we can cut them a bit of slack with regards to that. But it's magnified because of the magnitude of the game. If it's a pre-season friendly, you're not too fussed, are you? But because it's sort of do or die matches they're playing here against really good opposition, you sort of see that you do miss Glenn Kamara massively, and it's just you just got to get used to it. I mean, he's banned. That's the way it is, rightly or wrongly. Rangers will have to make do without him. John Lundstrom looked to me. I think he's going to be an asset this season. There's no question about it. But it's going to take a few weeks, not just to get up to match sharpness, but to fit into the way that Gerrard likes to play the system, his positional sense, and all that sort of stuff. Stephen Davis for me was just typical Stephen Davis. You don't really get a bad performance out of him, do you? He strolled it again for me, always looking to set up attacks, and he popped up, of course, with the goal at the end. But the players round about him, Scott Arfield, he'll give you 100% every game. There's no doubt about it. He's one of Gerrard's trusted lieutenants when he comes on. He'll put in a shift. However, he's not the Champions League standard. He's the sort of player you bring on to try and close a game out, or things like that, or you bring in league duty. I'm not too sure he'll be, if Rangers make the Champions League, he'll be one of the first starters.
Let me jump in on that one. I don't actually think it's not that Arfield for me is not Champions League quality. I think he'd be fine at that level. He's played at Premier League. I know he's getting on a bit. I actually just think it's more about the way Rangers set up. Is that Arfield? That's not really his natural role. That playing the left of quite a flat three, dropping back to cover the fullbacks. I think he's more forward thinking and needs the freedom to make those third man runs into the box to get the best out of him. So when you look to that midfield, and listen, Gerrard had no choice but to play that midfield, really. I think all three of us selected that midfield. It does look a little bit weak around the sort of defensive elements of the game that Rangers have been so good at under him, with no Ryan Jack, no Glenn Kamara in there. You know, that's a lot to give up when you're going up against a decent side, and Malmo are a decent side. I think in your interview with Tommy Moller-Nielsen, Derek, he called them the best team in Scandinavia.
Yeah, they're no mugs.
They're absolutely no mugs. So yeah, for me, just Arfield, it's just not really his role, or his natural role, or the role that he's most comfortable with, the one that he was being asked to perform last night.
But I think if Hadji or Aribo are fit next week, they come in for him, no question.
Yeah, no,
yeah.
I don't disagree with that. But the one thing Arfield does give you is he does give you a little bit more dig than those two players. But yeah. I think that Rangers have to win the game. Yeah, definitely one of those two. I think will come in there.
Okay, great. We're going to move on to a few questions. Stuart McDonald thinks we missed Kamara and Aribo, the sparks they would have provided. I don't think any of us will disagree with that.
No.
Stuart, another question here. What did we underestimate Malmo? I don't think anyone did underestimate Malmo, and I think Gerrard in his post-match press conference said as much yesterday. Said we knew they were going to be a really aggressive team at home. They would press high. I thought that they were stronger defensively than I thought they would be, having seen how many the lack of clean sheets this season. I don't think Rangers hit their level, but I don't think anyone thought this would be easy. I just think the expectation that we have of Rangers in Europe, Jonny, we would have probably been more confident prior to the tie that we could have seen it through. But I mean, I'd still feel confident if we hit our level that we could beat Malmo next week at Ibrox.
Oh, without a doubt, you know, Rangers have beaten better teams than Malmo. It's as simple as that. You know, over the last few years, it's going to take a big performance though, because Malmo are clearly a well-organised, well-drilled outfit. Now, Joshua, you're maybe the person to speak on this because you did this sort of deep dive in your preview. They haven't done as well away from home. They have looked a stronger outfit on their home patch, and they certainly don't press with anything like the intensity. I think it's around half the intensity they normally press with at home, and that has caused them a few nervy second leg encounters. And you saw the reaction at the end of the game. They knew that a huge opportunity for them to go through had gone with that goal. They knew the reaction was one of devastation at that end in terms of the defenders' reaction. So, listen, they're a solid side. There's no doubt about it. But I think Rangers, if they are playing anything like their best, and and we know it's not an if, we know it's a when the crowd get behind Rangers at Ibrox, I'm sure it will be absolutely bouncing. Then really everything's set up for them to go on and go through to this playoff.
Yeah, I think you're right. I watched a wee bit of Malmo, a fair bit of them before the game, and what struck me was that they took leads away to Riga and Helsinki, and did have nervy ties in both matches. Their pressing metrics, the PPDA, was about half. So it'll be interesting to see how they cope. I tend to think actually that although last night it would have been nice to travel home with an away goal, it's also in a way, beneficial that we don't have the threat of if we were to have another defensive lapse, that if Malmo were to score one or two, that would secure their passage. I'll come to you with this one, Derek. A couple of comments about Cedric Itten. I know you were impressed with him at halftime, certainly. What did you make of his performance leading the line throughout the 60 or 70 minutes he was on the pitch?
Yeah, I thought he did well. It sort of raised a few eyebrows when he got the nod in the starting lineup. But for me, I'd have started him. I think he deserves his chance, and I felt he did well. He held the ball up well. He showed great strength at times. Some lovely little touches inside to the likes of Ryan Kent and Scott Wright. Had a brilliant back heel at one point as well. I think it was to release Wright. So for me, brilliant first half from him. Second half, didn't quite get into the game as much. And I think understandably that he was, understandably, maybe he felt maybe a bit harsh to bring him on and send Sakala on. Maybe there was a few calls, I think, for Sakala to come on for someone else. But I think understandable. But he certainly put in a good shift. But there's no question about it. Alfredo Morelos is badly missed in games like this. He comes alive, doesn't he? He's the European top record goal scorer for Rangers. Loves big games. He just has that. Itten did well with the hold-up play, but in terms of being like predatory in front of goal and taking shots on, taking men on, he doesn't have that that Alfredo Morelos does, unfortunately. And I think everybody's hoping that Alfredo Morelos is ready to go next week, because he would be a massive boost if they can get him in the starting lineup.
Yeah,
I'm starting to wonder about Cedric Itten. I thought he was good in the game for what he did. But the way Rangers play, I think they need more of a multi-dimensional forward in there. I think Cedric Itten will do a good job in the Scottish Premiership when you need a physical presence. But there was a moment in the game where he got in behind and he made a good touch, but he just was nowhere near quick enough to take advantage of the situation. Morelos is a forward that can do lots of things. He can run in behind, he can hold the ball up, he can drop deep. He's multi-dimensional, so it's very, very hard to pin him down. This is why he's so successful in Europe. And I think, although Cedric Itten has had a good start to the pre-season, he just doesn't have that massive skill set that someone like Morelos does. I think even Kemar Roof, to be honest, has that. He can do lots of different things, and it puts defenders under real pressure. But I just feel in Europe that Cedric Itten maybe lacks a bit of pace. You're going to have a lot of balls into the box in the Scottish Premiership that you can take advantage of, but in Europe, perhaps maybe that's not going to be the case. And so I'm starting to have question marks on him, even though I did think he did have a good game for what he was asked to do. I just feel like maybe Rangers need a bit more in terms of that sense of urgency in terms of pace across the ground.
There were calls last night that perhaps Sakala could have come on alongside him, and they could have went with a two up top. I think that in pre-season it's worked. The both of them have played off quite well with each other, so that could have been a possibility. But of course, Gerrard just wanted to keep the same shape as he started the game with. Sakala, when he came on, full of industry as always, but Malmo were sitting so deep. It was just it was almost like Livingston at the weekend again. They just couldn't find space in behind, really.
Yeah, and I think if you did put Itten and Sakala on, Gerrard also spoke in his post-match interview. He said, you also risk the game going 3-0 as much as you want to chase a goal. You'd rather take 2-0 than 3-0 back to Ibrox, obviously, and I just think that maybe that's why they didn't take a man out of the midfield. I don't know if Hadji was even fit to come on, and it was quite a scarce bench. Got another couple of comments here that I'll read out to you. One viewer commenting it was infuriating we weren't shooting more from the edge of the box. Another talking about how it might take us a little bit of time to work our way up to the Champions League level. I mean, I'll come to you on the Stephen Davis goal, Jonny. I couldn't believe it when it went in because I just thought we could play for hours here and we're not going to score tonight. But yeah, sometimes those shots are so low probability of going in, but equally it takes a deflection and it's such a huge moment in the tie, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing, as we start to understand data analysis and the actual granular detail of football, you begin to realise that shots from outside the box don't have a high probability, which is why managers more and more are telling their players do not shoot from certain areas, because statistically it's proven that it's not worth it to do that. However, I think Stephen Davis was entitled to have a pop. It was just right on the edge of the box. As you've already discussed, Malmo were defending incredibly deep, incredibly tight. So with the seconds remaining, it was really his only option. And I'll tell you what, it was some feeling when that ball hit the net, and because that was so incredibly important, you can't understate it. As you've already said, having to win 3-0 at home is a really big ask. So to get that goal, it just changed the entire complexion of the tie. It must have been an absolute nightmare for our colleagues doing the match reports, because the total tenor of the result is completely changed. But in terms of just walking the ball into the net, I'm not sure about that. Is it Polly Walnuts that said that? Good name, Polly. I'm a fellow Soprano fan, so I can appreciate that completely. But I just think Malmo were really well organised and defensively sound. I just thought it was really difficult for Rangers to get any kind of penetration going. Scott Wright, I thought, had another good game, and when he got the ball and turned and started running, he looked like he was going to create problems. He had a great opportunity. I think when he had the chance to slip in, was it Itten, and he overcooked his pass.
Yeah, he should have had a shot.
Yeah, he should have had a shot himself.
Yeah.
And actually, but that was one of the better chances Rangers created. There was lots of half chances or decent moments, but never quite what you would say was a really good opportunity.
Yeah, absolutely. And just finally, quickly, Derek, I'll come to you. Gerrard's calling on the Ibrox crowd. He's never done it before, he said. It's obviously something he's thought about in a card. He knows he can only play scarcely to keep it significant. But if next week needed any more emphasis on it, that was it, wasn't it?
Yeah, I don't even think he has to ask the Ibrox crowd to play their part. They'll do it anyway. It's going to be absolutely huge next week. Hopefully, pretty much a full house in Ibrox or close to it. And they'll certainly play their part. I think it's going to be up there with the likes of Parma and Dino Kiev and what have you. I think that it'll be rocking next Tuesday night, and the players will get such a lift from that. Well, you hope they do. You can't help but not. And yeah, Gerrard, of course, I liked his interview last night with Rangers TV, calling on the fans, and he's clearly, it just shows you how much the Champions League means to him. It's a competition he would absolutely love to guide Rangers into. They're certainly good enough to do it, but it's not just the players that can be relied upon. Everyone has to play their part. So yeah, it sets it up nicely for next Tuesday night. I can't wait.
Absolutely. Okay, well, I think that's all we have time for today. Thanks a lot for the comments, the interaction. We will be back tomorrow morning with all the latest Rangers news and reaction. Until then, you can keep up with us on our socials and also over in the Rangers Review, and we will speak to you tomorrow morning. Thank you.